Very, very interesting. I was talking to Rob Jackson just before, and we really today is going to be talking about bringing lots of different people together. And there was an interesting website that he showed me, and this is blueprints, and they use some mathematical formula to generate these different images and show how we need to work together to achieve uh, the organization that we're looking for. So that was, thanks, Rob. Thanks for sharing that. We'd love to see what he does. And so there's some quite interesting things for McDonald's and Barack Obama, some interesting scenarios. Okay, great. So let me start off with my presentation. Just trying to get to where it's at. There we go. Okay, so this is about unified governance, and I'm specifically going to show you a paper that we have developed for the NDMO, and I was asked to do it on behalf of the EDM Council or EDM Association, and I did it in conjunction with Predago, with Mario, so his name is South Africa, and then Modelware Systems. So, and I just want to show you some of the challenges that they're facing. Now, if you look at this diagram, I'm sure everybody's seen it. Um, maybe Debs, I can't see the the team. So if anyone puts their hand up, or if someone, Paul or Debs, if you could just tell me that somebody's asking a question, and I'll be able to respond. Right.
Okay.
Okay, so this was developed some time back. If you remember, in the beginning of this year, I went to the Enterprise Data World Conference, and we spoke about all of these different frameworks, and I specifically used the NDMO just because that's the one that forced me to start, as an example, integrating the NDMO Data Management Standard 1.5 and the DMBOK. So I came in to do some training around the DMBOK, and then everyone kept on saying, but we've got the standard, and how do I do the mapping? How do I do all of these compliance issues? How do I map it to the DMBOK? So I spent a lot of time mapping deliverables and building a relationship between the NDMO and the DMBOK. And then I did a similar thing with DCAM. And then I met Mario, and Mario and I have been working together, building playbooks for data stewards. But the important thing is that the NDMO has all sorts of standards that they need to bring together. So they've got NDMO standard over here, which is slightly bigger than DMBOK. I call it DMBOK plus plus, because they've got things like open data, freedom of information, data value realization that the DMBOK doesn't have. They've also got NORA, which is a National Office of Reference Architecture, which is very similar to TOGAF. So that's your enterprise architecture. They've got NCA, which is cybersecurity. They've got NAII, which is the National AI Index. They've got the National Data Index. They've got the National Archives Record. They've just got lots and lots of stuff that they need to do and bring all together. And what was interesting was that, remember when we did this, we actually looked at Tony Mazzarella, and he did a study for a PhD in terms of the people's usage, number of frameworks used by industry. And you can see here at max, we're talking about just over 1.7 frameworks. Okay. Now, Saudi's got how many? 5, 6, 7 of these different frameworks that they need to work on. And what I found very interesting was I was preparing for this. I'd done this paper the week before, preparing for a course this morning. And when I walked in, we had a few people from different ministries within Saudi, and they were talking to each other. And I didn't understand all the words that they were saying, but there seemed to be lots of frustration. And the frustration when asking them what the problem was, the frustration was something like this. Oh, we have cybersecurity that's regulated by the NCA, and they have to develop their policies and procedures, and they have to report to the CEO, and they have to submit all of the evidence to NCA. Okay, and then the DMO has their regulator called the NDMO, and they have to build all these policies and procedures and take a guess. Data security is one of them that they have to do. And there's lots of fights between these different departments. And I remember having a discussion with one organization, and they were battling with the same thing. They said they as a DMO, they've got data security, and they have to align with cybersecurity. And when they were discussing with cybersecurity, the answer that came back to them was, "We don't talk to you guys." And then they said, "Well, please, can we have a meeting to talk about it?" No, we don't have meetings. It took 6 months to organize a meeting just so these different parties could talk to each other. Now, what's just been introduced is the National AI Index. And that's another level of regulations, and they've set up their own department to manage all of these regulations. So what's happening is they've got these different regulation bodies. They have to submit evidence to all of the regulation bodies, and they are all in stovepipes. They're all separate. They've all separated. So there's this data management, cybersecurity, data privacy, records management, and AI ethics. Okay, so they've got all these different duplications. They've got gaps between and I said, one of the nice things that banks have is they tend to have a GRC department where all of the governance, the corporate governance, the data governance, cybersecurity, records management, ethics, all these things come together. And I said that would be nice so that at least you could agree on who does what. I was very fortunate when I was working for one of the central banks, and I had a similar challenge. And I went to cybersecurity, and they said, "Howard, with pleasure. If you want to do all the policies and procedures, we'll be very happy. So you do the policies and procedures, and we will enforce the policies and procedures." Okay, so I think that was very fortunate. I was lucky there, but that's not your typical situation. And especially in Saudi, where the cybersecurity teams are way ahead, maybe 2 or 3 years ahead of the DMO, and that's even further ahead of the N or the DAIO, the data or the AI office. Okay, so we're trying to do this, and we're trying to do it all in silos. And my biggest concern and the biggest challenge that I'm seeing is that we've got these separate data teams, and each data team wants business to allocate a steward. Records management wants a records management. Data management wants a business data steward and technical data stewards. Privacy wants your privacy officers and privacy specialists. AI ethics wants they want the AI stewards. So now what we're doing is we're basically going to the business, and we're having to allocate all of this work to them because, of course, they are the people that understand the business requirements. And we're having to fit this together. Now, my goodness, if we have a steward per silo, the first question I ask is if the definition of a data steward is a SME, business data steward is an SME, what are we going to do with AI stewards? What are we going to do with records management and privacy? How do we keep on finding extra SMEs to do this work? So I think there's lots of these different challenges, and we need to bring them together. Now, I'm not suggesting that we make one department. I'm not suggesting that we all come together and we bring all these departments together. I do believe we can focus on our different regulations or different obligations that we have, and we just need to orchestrate the different implementations. And AI, I suppose, is the one that's bearing the brunt of it because it's the one that got challenges with ethics. It's the one that's got challenges using structured, unstructured, structured data. So there's lots of records, especially with the generative AI and RAG, where we're having to bring our content into the scenario, and we've got to ensure that we've got good quality records that are coming in here. All the contracts, all that type of information. They've got data privacy issues, PII, SPI. So are they allowed to have these type of features in their machine learning models? Okay, cybersecurity. We saw with Mario, who was saying that these LLMs have to be controlled. Where can they go and look for data? Which websites can they extract information from? Can they go anywhere, or how do we need to control them? So typically our problem is we've got separate teams. We haven't got great communication. And with the people this morning, I said, and he said, his initial response to me says, Howard, it's easy to talk about, but it's just about impossible to achieve. And I said, I agree with you. I don't think that it's easy. I think it's very hard. But at the same time, if we don't have this set of mandates, or this team agreement between how do we work together for the good of AI, we're constantly going to have these AI failures. So maybe just to pause there for a little bit and get some feedback. If I can't see anybody on that. Is there any observations or similar feelings that you're sitting with? Yes, William.
Yeah, so Howard, I totally agree with the challenge that you're highlighting. I'm just wondering whether or not AI is not a technology. It is closer to a consumer and therefore more like a human being. And if it's more like a human being, it should be making use of all those silos the same way as humans do, but obviously at greater scale or speed or whatever the case is. And if that's the case, then I think we might be tackling this from trying to solve it from an IT and a governance perspective, as opposed to trying to solve this from a how do we make AI a resource in the company, and therefore it requires support, and the same kind of support that you would give people, you now need to give AI.
Right.
I'm just wondering whether or not there's something there.
Yeah, and I suppose what we are doing is we're using AI to help us reduce the headcount, help us interact with customers in a machine learning way. But I still think it's at this stage we have this situation of it tends to be the software developers with the data scientists that get the responsibility of building a system. So it all manifests in a system, William. So there's either a chatbot, or there's a RPA, or there's an application that integrates this, or there's a RAG or a ChatGPT. Now, I like what you said in a way, because she's not here at the moment, but Di Joseph calls Claude Claudia, and that's her favorite person that she interacts with. So I think there is this level of almost personification or reification of this body that's helping us make decisions and giving us advice, and that we're getting feedback from. But most of the times it's been implemented by software developers and data scientists that put the user interface together, and then of course there's data scientists under the cover that are providing the model. So I think it may take some time, and I think the problem we're getting to is we can't even get those systems up and running and in deployment and working correctly.
Yeah, I'm just, Christina, good point. Is it a case that it depends on the CEO as to the CEO's view as to whether or not this is a tool or whether or not this is something more?
Yeah.
And based on that, you might have to have a different approach.
Right. Now, William, I don't know if you know, I think I told you one night where the party model that Oracle has developed and many people create for master data, they've extended those party types. There were only two party types, one being an individual and one being an organization. And just, I think it was about 10 months ago, a year ago, they created a bot and added it as a party. So that was a derivative of these parties that were considered to be legal entities, because that bot was giving advice to the external customers. And so, yeah, it's certainly getting to that level. Exactly how far we can take it and how that changes, I'm not sure. But
does this
thank
mean
you.
it's got to be sold or bought? In other words, the CEO might buy it. Yes, I want it. Or the CEO might have to be sold it. If it's being sold, then IT's got to make the case, drive the case. If it's being bought, then the CEO probably is prepared to put effort behind making it into governance.
Yeah, I think it's both. I think it's both, William. I think some CEOs are desperate to change and desperate to be part of all the transformations, and seeing that other companies are supposedly running away and doing some wild things. And then there's others that just don't buy it and they're not interested, or stuff like that. So I think there's a combination and you have to play it either way.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Let me not hog.
Great. Okay. Any other observations? Christina, I know you've been doing this a lot. I don't know how you find bringing all these different departments together, or things like that. Is a big challenge for you as well?
So higher education, right? Academic freedom on top of, being risk aware. We are currently have a team basically, and what we're doing is we're going out and finding use cases and putting them into play
Right.
immediately, and saying, hey, how can I help you in your office, or how can I help you in your department to do your job more efficiently and effectively? But we're also doing that on the side of caution, because we're saying, hey, we know that these tools are good. Other institutions are using these tools. We have looked at these tools. We vetted these tools. They're great tools, and so we're trying not to be prescriptive again, right? We want to allow curiosity, but our CIO is like, hey, let's do this, right? Let's do
Right.
this. Let's not like just rush into and just get anything and everything that we want. So what we're doing is, right now we have a workshop planned for next week. We're having AWS come in, teach us how to do Bedrock agents, different ways that we can use AI agents within our institution, on our websites. We have some cases out there where we're looking at building RAGs to say, hey, you have documentation in your office that exceeds 10,000 pages. How about we create something for you that you can ask it questions and make it solitary? But it's up to us, right? The people that are in security and data governance and AI governance to say, okay, this is great, this is wonderful, but we have to think on the side of, I need to look at the security risk. I need to see how this impacts the institution. I need to set guidelines on what you're putting into this AI. I'm not saying you can't, I'm saying, could you please not put PII in there? Could you take some consideration on what kind of data? But I also am seeing everything that's happening in the world, and I see both. I see CIOs and CEOs rushing in and making drastic decisions. Oh, this is going to solve all of our problems. Get rid of this department, get rid of this department. Let's just implement this. I see a lot of them backpedaling because something has happened, it's failed. But then you have those who are cautious. So it's interesting. But when William was talking, I was thinking about that movie, where everybody's trying to say AI is human, right?
Yeah.
It's not a tool, but I don't think we're there yet. And I hesitate to say that it's human for what it is right now, because then I know we start putting this restraint or requirements on these things that we're just not ready to deal with yet.
Now, Christina, one of the big questions for me is, are you seeing that need, that it's not just data governance? I'm sure you've got a records management as separate, and now you're having to work together. So all of these areas are having come together for this solution. It's not like previous, where we really just focus on the data in a database. we're now having to focus on all types of data.
So we've always had that in our area. So
Okay.
we already have a records retention plan that is followed. We already have all of these policies, and we're a very small institution. So we only have 3,000 students. We're not like
Right.
Harvard. I
Okay.
think they have a more complex system. We are also
Right.
very centralized, and so everything does come from just EIS. So we have EIS, and then
Okay.
we have our warehouse and stuff. So that does make it a lot easier. But it is because others are requesting and saying we need these things, and we need to also figure out how to do it safely.
Okay, thank you. All right, KK, I see your hands up. I'm not sure exactly how to say your
thank
name.
you. Yeah, it's a bit long name, but you can call me as Prabha.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for mentioning those siloed scenarios, right? I'm so happy that when you mentioned, because that's exactly what we are seeing in my organization. We are in the journey to implement that, but the same scenario where PD comes and say, okay, only we are the team can define the policies or principles, right? So,
Right.
Right, yeah, and then we need to deal with that, okay, and know how to handle that, and maybe two more critical kind of a challenge I observed in this journey. I just thought of sharing that here. Not sure whether it's a common or have you ever come across this kind of, right? So one thing is aligning with this to the business, right? So we have the concept, yeah, but then this question, so what from the business, right? So what are we going to gain from this? Supporting this journey, supporting this or sponsoring this data governance program, right? I think it's a classical one. And on top of that, another critical is kind of a data domain, which are cross-functional data domains, right? The ownership of that steward or the data owner. Either we have, multiple or too many ownership or no ownership at all.
Right.
So,
So
these are,
So the one I fully agree with you on the change side, and all of us have to know how to answer that or ensure that there's that desire or what is in it for me. So with all the business people we interact, can we explain to them what is in it for them, and do they get it? And if they don't get it, then they're probably not going to buy it. I mean, they don't see the value. Now, the other thing that you're talking about when it comes to cross-domain, there's some really interesting approaches there of depending on how your departments are set up. You could have what's called an enterprise data steward or a domain data steward. So if you have customers split across multiple departments, then you would set up a customer domain data steward that would define and customize the policies and procedures for that domain. Okay, and then how do we deal with customer? How do we deal with product? And you need to get an accepted individual that coordinates across all the departments. So you'd have some level of ownership of this in each department or stewardship, and then a domain data steward that will help resolve all of these issues between the different departments.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Great.
Agree with you. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thanks for those questions. That's simple. Okay. So then going back to the presentation. So we've got our stovepipes. Okay. And one of the things I also felt is that how do we solve this? Well, we got to create this unified governance. It doesn't mean that we the same department or the same things, but we got to have an understanding of the different roles that we play within a project. Now, how do we bring it together? Well, for me, it's about a cohesive framework. So we've got to take all these different frameworks and we've got to put it like we've been showing on that orchestration, is bring it up a level to be a set of operational procedures that don't talk about A, B, C, D, or data ethics or IT governance or records management, but they talk about business processes, BAU, business processes, business operational procedures. And so what's important about this is it's a set of coordinated policies and procedures. So each area can still focus on what they know best, for example, records management or IT governance or AI ethics. But we then coordinated and orchestrate the different frameworks. So how do we bring that together? But we need to eliminate the silos. We need to have shared responsibility, and we need this consistent controls. Now, when I was talking a lot about this, it's almost what we're seeing is AI is the wildfire. That wildfire can rip through national parks. We were there in America at Yellowstone when it exploded. And one of the biggest lessons that they learned was that concept of trying to reduce fires caused the problem. So then shortly after that, they introduced that concept of fire breaks. And the fire breaks are going to come from all of these different areas: IT governance, records management, data management. So we're all there to establish the appropriate fire break, not to stop the fires. That doesn't work. If you try and stop the fires, you're going to create a bigger fire. It's about allowing the fire breaks and allowing that innovation to burn. How do we enable this? How do we get this thinking across between all of our different departments, the different areas? Okay, so I like that metaphor of AI as the wildfire. It's the one that's innovating. It's the one that's disrupting. It's the one that's burning and creating potential innovation and also creating potential damage. And people are pulling away from it. So it depends on where we are and what our history is. Okay. All right. So we're trying to create this holistic view of corporate governance, data governance, records, cybersecurity, data privacy, AI governance. I don't think there's anything else. I don't think, and I suppose a lot of times when I talk about corporate, it tends to be IT governance or ITIL that's integrated in that. But there are things that corporate governance would need to be responsible for, and that being the ethics and the system, and then IT would be the system implementation. So how do we create this holistic view? How do we bring it all together? But what I can tell you is that we're busy all operating independently. We're all creating our own controls or fire breaks, and we're hoping that this thing fits together, but I haven't seen it working. And of course, we need to work with the people with the business to help that desire, to help them see the benefits and help them overcome some of the challenges. And then also, if they're going too fast, then maybe we need to slow down. If they're tackling too much, like the PII and the SPI. Okay, so what we're trying to do is, for example, data management. There's certainly DMBOK and DCAM. Now we have to add the NDMO standards. And this is for the Saudi environment, cybersecurity, 27001, NIST, and NCA requirements, records management, data privacy, PDPL, and then AI governance. And they haven't just got AI ethics, they've got several other areas as well. They've got the regulations for using LLM for government. And they've actually just created a new LLM. I don't know if anyone's heard of it. They call it Alarm. It's part of the Humane project. So interesting there, William, in terms of they're actually referring it to as Humane, but their focus is on responsible AI and responsible data management. Okay, so we have to bring these worlds together. Now, we can't all just focus on our standard, ISO 27000. And that's what we do a lot of the times. And we almost become religious about our standards. Yeah, it's like either DCAM or DMBOK, and we don't agree with each other. Or it's the NDMO or things like that. And I think we create a lot of separation when we do that as well. Okay, so we've got to move from these policies. We've got to move from everyone defining policies, arguing about policies. I'm not saying we shouldn't have them, but what I am saying is making use of an orchestration engine that helps guide these underlying executions, then we can then focus on delivering a project. And then when we get to deliver a project, this is, but you got to put this control in, and you got to do this, and you got to do that. And it's like, okay, great, we do it. And depending on who's responsible, they actually implement all these things. So bringing all of these frameworks together so that I can see what's in the cybersecurity framework, I can see what's in the LLM framework, I can see as a governance person, I can see what these different frameworks are trying to achieve, and I can make sure that we achieve it together. Okay, so it's operational procedures, workflow automation in terms of those responsibilities, and then gating, just making sure that that wildfire doesn't spread too quickly. Okay, so this is basically the Saudi vision, and what they have come out, which was very strong, was establishing this vision, but with accountability. Okay, so they said this is great, but we have to have responsible governance. We can't just go away and create all these things. And it's fascinating to see what the different ministries are doing. For example, the health ministry, they are bringing health records and they're creating a unified patient record across the entire city, across the entire country. And that's not just for their own citizens, but it's also for international people that come in. There's a patient record. And if these patients go anywhere, they can access the data about the patient. Now, what I find amazing and what I've had challenges with in South Africa is you've got these different bodies in the health organization. So you've got like the ophthalmologists, and then you've got the oncologists, and you've got all these different people. They've got their own boards that manage their work, and they don't like sharing, or they're very worried about bringing all of this data together. And so we pick up some problems there as well, just in terms of the politics. Okay, so we have to have the strategic alignment. We have to constantly show that this is linked to, oh, shucks. Sorry. We have to constantly, okay, constantly show how it all works together, and then we need the executive oversight. So these are all the elements that need to be brought together. Okay, so this is basically what we're trying to achieve. For data management, we've got DMBARC, DCAM, the INDIMO standard, the PDPL standards and stuff like that, and we need one unified policy there. We've also got different demands on the cybersecurity, records management, and AI ethics, and everything's about trying to bring all of this stuff together. And we can't always operate one policy at a time or one framework at a time. Okay, we have to work together. Okay, so this is the big call. This is the big drive is how do we get away from everyone trying to create their own set of policies and procedures to a unified set that we can work together. And the only unification there is that sort of operational procedure that we do to implement an AI system or a data product, whatever we're looking at. Okay, so basically the way this orchestration works, once we've got all the playbooks and we've got all the frameworks that we've chosen, and then each area has looked at each framework to say, okay, what are the things that we need to do immediately? So we've got that concept of crawl, walk, run, and depending on your maturity, when you're starting, INDIMO started off with P1. When you're starting, these are the things that we need to do. Okay, and then once you've gone past the crawl phase and you're in the walk phase, these are the things we need to do with respect to these different frameworks. So each area needs to look at taking their framework, and I know it's hard because what lots of the frameworks do is try to say we need to implement everything. And it's a case of, yeah, I get that, but we can't deal with all of that together. We can't fit it all together. So we have to, each area needs to say, okay, these are my crawl things that have to be done. And a lot of times those crawl tend to be at an enterprise level, getting executive agreement, getting strategies done, getting policies sorted out for everybody. And so we want to get that done quickly, and then we can get onto the project initiation. Now, what is nice is if you say, okay, if I have to build a chatbot, then all I want to do are the policies and the procedures to manage the chatbot, nothing else. That's that one that we're going to work on. And we may go a little bit slowly in the beginning. So the initial data initiatives will take more time, but then we'll get faster and faster as we go along, and we start to automate the task generation. So, okay, to do this chatbot that we're going to now use an LLM for, or a RAG, and this chatbot's going to collect data so that we can make a decision. We can do that claim decision. We can either approve it or reject it. So that's what the chatbot's there to do. So how do we get there, and how do we generate the tasks? So again, if we know each one, we can say this is what needs to be done. We assign the tasks to the people, and then we track it. We then collect the evidence, and then we gate it. So we say, okay, where are we with all these different areas of evidence? And we got to work together as a team. So the AI people, the AI stewards, the AI governance to an extent needs to understand the bias in the models, or the content of the RAG, or whatever it may be, the records management, the data management. We need to bring this together. Okay, so bias auditing, privacy impact assessment, model documentation, human in the loop, all these things, risk management. We need to bring those tasks together. Okay. Benefits of that, when we work together like this, we have less overlap. We start to build in the compliance. I think this is really important to us, is can I build it in and not have it front and center, that every time you see me, I'm talking about the DM bulk, or I'm talking about ISO 42001, or whatever it is. So you just get this label, oh, you missed the DM bulk, or you missed the DCAM, or whatever it is, and that label needs to disappear. Okay. But we do see that there's been some tremendous benefits. And the one area that I looked at was for the insurance claim processing, where they automated it. They had a 30% reduction on their project timeframes because of working together as a team. And the improvements from a fraudulent claim, and that was dramatic. But the improvement on bringing all of these together and orchestrating it, and they did it manually, so they weren't doing it in an automated fashion. They were orchestrating all of these things together. Yeah. All right. Project approval time. So this is the unified governance that I was talking about, the reduction in governance meetings, the acceleration on the project development. They had lots to say. They were very happy with what they had achieved and things like that. So this was quite interesting to see that they had done it without a tool. And now Paul Frobel and I were talking about, well, just imagine if you could have a tool that orchestrates these frameworks. I think we need to get to something like that. So this is what we are suggesting in terms of trying to create this framework across all of these different areas, and then look at an orchestration platform. And it was interesting to see that blueprint that I was showing you, that website. This is sort of what it looks like. I need to do some more research, but here's a person that put it together. And I remember we talk about culture and strategy, or culture eating strategy, but how do we have breakfast together? So how do cybersecurity and data governance and records management have breakfast together? That's what the vision is, and then scale that into a nationwide situation. Okay, so I can't believe that we can do this without culture and change management. And now it's not just the business culture, but it's also the IT governance cultures. How do we work together to bring this thing out? I think that's a critical aspect that we're working in. Foundational structures, implementation framework that deals with everything. So each one of us have to play our part. So data governance needs to bring the right data to the AI model. Records management needs to bring the right unstructured data. Privacy needs to ensure that you're not violating any of that. ISO needs the quality. So all of these things, we need to get this framework together for implementation. And I like using this concept of total quality management, that TQM that Deming and Stewart put together. That's all about understanding the customer requirements, then understanding the product, does it fit the customer requirements, and then what is the raw material going into the processes that delivers the product? How do we take care of those areas, and how do we ensure the quality that needs to be delivered? Then, of course, we got to do the technology enablement, or this governance orchestration platform, where we bring all of these operating models together, different frameworks, and almost a single set. When we do that governance gating, there are going to be multiple parties involved. If we think of a RAG that's not just working on the unstructured data, but it's also bringing together the data that it collects as part of the chatbot and the data that it uses as context. So if we talk about an insurance claim chatbot, they would have to do some queries on what are all the claims for this policyholder. We have to first of all check that is the policyholder in our master data system, is the policy an appropriate contract, and then what are all the claims, what are all the payments. All of this stuff needs to come together with the appropriate unstructured data to help the chatbot and the anomaly detection make a decision. So it's fascinating when they look at that anomaly detection. It's not just about statistical analysis, but it's also about the words that are being used in the claim. So, if you have a medical claim and you're describing a operation and you're not using the appropriate terms for that operation, these LLMs can detect it. So they can detect that there's something wrong in the claim statement or the police report or whatever it may be. The quality is not just at a structured data level, the quality is at unstructured. And now, of course, we can bring some of that into a graph type of environment and unite all of this, but we've got to get the data together. And RAG is a really nice way. So these are some of the KPIs that we are suggesting. The efficiency gains around compliance. So if we can orchestrate this platform, what are the benefits that we get from a compliance point of view? Reduction on the amount of compliance tasks that are used as part of the software development lifecycle. The different controls, if we can reduce the controls. So it's all about, for me, it's all about reducing all of these independent controls. Can we get them down almost to nothing, and behind a RAG or whatever it is, can we bring them down but still be compliant? Risk reduction, identification of compliance issues as quickly as possible. I don't know if you remember us talking about that LLM as a judge. Okay, so you've got one LLM that's presenting information back to the claimant, and then before you present that information back to the claimant, you could present the response to an LLM, and it can say, well, this is a toxic message, or this should come from a human, or whatever it is. So we can almost use that way of a model vetting another model, vetting the output. So we then focus on business enablement as well, and cultural adoption. So these are some of the KPIs that we are suggesting to be able to improve this unified governance that we were talking about. Okay, so this is what we've got to be doing. Hopefully we all see it, that we need to come together with an integrated governance. I'm not saying make everybody in the same department work together and stuff like that, but we need a way of saying, to do this task, to deliver this action on this AI, these are the things we need to do for security, we need to do for IT, for corporate, for whatever it is, and we all know what we need to do in terms of achieving that. And then, hopefully, of course, it's keeping that humane-centric element there. How do we work together as a team? How do we sort this problem out as a team, not as individual silos, and how do we enable ourselves to do this with technology? So that's my story. I'd love to hear from you in terms of what you think about it. What's your feeling? Do you think it's possible? I do understand there are challenges. Yes, we can share the slides with you, Rob, certainly. Yes, Rob, would you like to comment whilst we have you there?
We're having very nice rain here up in Joburg. I just thought I'd tell you, just in case, whatever. So, I think once again, it really is around the right people in the right places. And if we don't start off with people who are by nature collaborators versus people that are trying to paddle their own canoes, given management KPIs assigned to make sure the right behavior is there. So it's that kind of stuff which I think is so important as well. You've covered some of it rather well. I'm actually blown away by, once again, the amount of work that you have done with your colleague whose name I can't remember. But yeah, it really is stunning.
Thank you. Yeah, you're 100% correct. And I think Christina also highlighted something is, you know, the business people are looking after these assets and they are paying attention, but we need a comprehensive approach, and we need to support those data stewards in terms of delivering that governance and making sure we get it without laboring them with all sorts of excessive governance and compliance issues. William.
Yeah, I think similar lines to what Rob is talking about. My biggest challenge has always been your managers and your senior managers in the business. They've got a way of work. They've got understanding of how to do business. They've been trained up using the MBA. They have their comfort zones. They have their KPIs, etc. But then my question is really, how do we get them to not see this as overhead? Because that's now where the challenge comes. Now, when I say overhead, it's about trying to manage their people and their people's reaction to these additional things that are coming into play. Because often
now,
that's where they
William, maybe to, I think Christine was talking about that, and I that's some of the ideas I like about what Bob Steiner has to talk in terms of non-evasive. So a lot of the times what you should be talking about is when you set up a data steward, first of all, you set up that data steward to be able to look after the data that they are working with. And the idea is to improve the quality of their work. The idea is not to improve the quality of the data, but to improve the quality of their work. So similarly with AI, as a case of, okay, if I want to build a model to do my anomaly detection or fraudulent claim recognition, then what we're trying to do is show them that we can help them approve the ones that are low risk, get those ones approved, and then you're going to be focusing on ones that are high risk, and then we can reduce that fraudulent thing. So all of these stewards need, the message to them is not, oh, there's this extra work, but it's work that you're doing, and we're going to help you help you do it better.
Yeah, and it needs to be targeted at those business people, your managers and your senior managers, right?
Oh yes. Oh, definitely. I don't think we can survive if we
governance, that doesn't really land for them, right?
No, agreed. It's not. It's about business enablement, right? It's not about governance. Great. Rob, I see your hands up. Was there another question, or was this an old hand?
My hands are old. Yes, very old. I'm sorry about that. I've been hiding them, but I guess it's a giveaway when you see my face. That's why I'm not on the camera. My camera's broken, by the way. So that's
no problem.
Okay, sorry.
No problem at all. Okay. Any other comments? I know Paul Grub has been reading a lot. I don't want to push you to make a comment, but I'd love to have your feedback. I know this is something you've been considering for a while. Maybe it's the caffeine.
Yeah, I know I'm back in the hotel. I was wondering about something. You can stop me if this is not the right place to ask it now. But with all these things we bring together, and you and I've said a lot about RAG and how to, sort of combine that with LLMs and so on. And I was wondering, when we bring graph databases, knowledge graphs into that play, in this context, I was just wondering where that fits in. Do you have a view on that?
Yeah, I think and I see John O'Gorman's here as well. I think that graph database is certainly a way of unifying the different data types. So you are able to identify and relate documents to data and connect those two different areas. Now, of course, there's an LLM on top that's connecting these dots, but it's helpful to be able to use the graph to infer things, to infer understanding of what we're talking about. So the more understanding we have of the person we're dealing with, the insight that we have, and being able to navigate that graph to get more insight, so that we could have an agent that asks for logical reasoning or deduction using the graph. I think there's value that we can get out of that as well. So I think it's just for me, it's a much stronger and nicer structure to be able to work with, and we can combine documents and data. And I really like the way John's tool did that, where he could associate the scripts that doctors wrote in hospitals with other data areas and keep those connections together.
Is a graph database something you can ingest into your vector databases to be accessed in RAG?
Yes, you
is
can.
that how it works? Okay.
Yes, you can. You can use that as a source. You can use an agent to also query that and give you that context back. Okay. So I have seen quite a few people talking about, well, can we not be using a graph database instead of a RAG database? But
okay. Instead of a vector database, is that what you mean?
Correct. Sorry.
Okay.
Maybe John may have a comment on that. John, any comments from your side on that? Okay, maybe not.
Sorry, sorry,
No
Howard.
problem.
Yeah, I was late. Teams made me basically reboot my whole platform here.
Oh, sure. Sorry.
So I missed the presentation. I've seen most of it, and as someone else mentioned, kudos to you for the amount of work and the completeness. So to address Paul's question about graph databases, the cool thing for me about graph is that it's almost, and to your point, Howard, they're almost structurally agnostic.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really care where like graph databases don't particularly care where the data comes from or what kind of structure. It could be relational, could be XML, could be documents. And so our approach is typically to overlay knowledge graphs over top of enterprise data sources.
Right.
Yeah, and the what we bring to the party is some tightly controlled protocols for classification, etc., and attribution.
Nice. Yeah.
So, and that sort of makes it so that you can connect the semantics of content and data regardless of how it's stored or where it's stored.
Right.
Yeah. So that's kind of the So graph databases are really, really flexible and almost always focused on semantics.
And maybe the important thing there for you, Paul, is that you could probably simplify the different agents that are used to collect the data together, because you've got the graph database that's on top of those other disparate databases.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Good question. Thank you. Any other questions? I finished early today.
55 minutes rule, I think, for the first time ever was adhered to.
I'm not done yet. Howard, something that
Yes,
I would
William.
like to see. I was wondering whether or not there would be videos that came out that would show practical implementation of what each of those slides actually do and mean in a business environment. Because often people hear it, they see the slide, they kind of grasp it slightly, but it's only really when you see a video of it being implemented or something like that that it really comes home.
Right. Now, William, we're trying to do that with the Predago platform. So that was, if you remember some of those presentations from Mario, and Rob Jackson was referring to that. And certainly one could look at trying to put a simplified video together to actually show the power of this thing coming together. But I like what you're suggesting is to see how each of these different roles play. But we had a really nice engagement with MetLife where we started to build, started at the policy level. So we had PDP, the Indian PDP, I think, I can't remember what it is. We had the LLM stuff. We had some of the insurance frameworks and things like that. And it was amazing to see it. We spent like 2 hours talking about LLMs. And then we spent about 2 hours talking about data privacy and what we can do at this point in time, and then data management and things like that. So you can work independently, but you're aggregating it up to a operational procedure. And once you've made those decisions, when you set up an AI project, it brings all of these tasks into play. So you've got to create this deliverable, you've got to do this piece of work, you've got to do this, and it just reduces that complexity down to a set of OPs, business processes, and you can see what you need to do. But I like what you're saying. Is I'll talk to Mario about building a video.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Great, guys. Thank you very much. Thanks for attending. I really appreciate it. Thanks for your feedback. I'm glad I got a couple of dry runs before I go and actually talk to